Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Classic Quest podcast. This is the show where we break down the classic hip hop albums track by track, give you our thoughts and ideas on every single song. My name is Holden Stefan Roy.
I'm your lady friend Bonnie.
And today we will be speaking about Eyedea Abilities' album, Firstborn. So we're going to do the intro bit, and if you want to skip that, you can check the description of this video where you'll see all the timestamps for when we talk about every song. But we like to start off every single episode letting you know that we are not the biggest professionals in the world. We are some regular folk who decided to one day start doing these album reviews, and then alas, here we are all this time later reviewing album after album. You learn a thing or two, you're still kind of ignorant. Both those things are true, and that's where we're at, and that's why the comments are so valuable and so helpful to us, because Googling stuff like what's up with Eyedea Abilities Firstborn, it just doesn't have all the results of, say, Googling Eminem as a contrast where there's a plethora of information, which is why
underground rappers, it's a little bit more difficult.
So you folk are amazing in the sense that often when we do these reviews after the fact, y'all leave your comments and your anecdotes and your feelings and your thoughts, and it truly just enhances our knowledge, because say we come back to ideas and abilities in the future, y'all might be teaching us some stuff that when we next talk about them will overall make us appreciate them more and just even correct or maybe enhance the overall review, because let's be real, y'all gonna read the comment section and that's just part of the whole video experience. So we encourage any kind of comments. If you leave a comment, we'll answer you. Plus, you might just end up being our favorite comment on last week's video.
Yep.
Last week we released 3 videos. It was all parts
it's a busy
of
week.
Eminem's Relapse album, and on that, the third part 3 Refill, which came out a couple days ago for us, that would be a comment from Tia, and I was like, a girl's watching us? And like, I'm saying that because the analytics have it at like literally 99.9% male, and that 0.1% is probably Bonnie for a lot of like what is female.
Yep.
So it's really cool to see other genders showing up in the comments, and I hope that's not like weird to anybody watching this, but it's just nice to know that it's not 100% men, okay?
Yeah.
So Tia goes, Relapse would be average without Refill to me. And I thought that was such an interesting perspective.
Yep.
And it was mimicked by a few people in the comments where the entire adding of the 9 songs to Refill almost like completed it and gave like that weight of almost normal Eminem, or a couple more songs to enhance the theme, which just overall across the 29 tracks gives you, well, it seemed like there was a couple of people that were like, the Drake song is a bit weird, but outside of that, it's like across the board, like just flushing it out and giving it what was needed to balance out the project. So I thought that was an interesting perspective, and it's not often I feel like you'll get that kind of support for like the bonus edition. So
yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it was just good to read that. It was, maybe we were just burnt out. I didn't necessarily feel that way, but
well, I gave it a higher grade than I did with just like full Relapse.
Well, I don't. Well, the thing is like I think I gave it around the same grade, but a bit lower because there was just a couple of songs that were dumb. But I mean, this is just kind of the tangential shit you get with us. But like after reviewing it took a lot of time to do that review in terms of just listening, and I feel like it was a lot of Eminem songs at once in the era of Eminem that might be my least favorite. And by the end of it, I do confess there was a little bit of burnout when we were doing the Refill personally, for my like objectivity sake. So it's entirely possible that and this happens a lot when we do these reviews. I try to hear each song 4 to 5 times at least before I'll talk about it, because I don't really feel like it's right to do so. I used to try to get away with less listens. Reviews sucked. So like with that though, sometimes you find that you really like something a lot more 6 months later after that.
Yeah, some of them stick with you, and then it's like you it's you kind of grow with it.
Or like I'll read a comment from somebody and they'll be like, "You're wrong. This song's dope." So I'll go listen to it and I'll be like, "Yeah, I was wrong. This song is dope." But like sometimes hearing the song outside of the context of the album also is a completely different experience.
And with new information, like you're saying, like, you know, when somebody tells you like, "Oh, this is actually what the song's about," and you didn't realize it, it's like, oh, and you go listen to it, like you're gonna get that whole new perspective.
And I remember like when we started this, I was so against caring about like the behind the scenes and the perspective that went into creating the songs. But I guess my attitude on that shifted a bit because once you understand why something's brilliant, you appreciate it more. And that's why like this whole history quest has been fun. Anyway, this is what you came for on this video. We're gonna get into it real shortly. We just wanted to say thank you to all of you who are going to teach us more, you rhyme sayers fans, you. Special thanks to the patrons, Ismail Gadamsi, Chris Prado, DJ Black Hurricane, Lyndia Williams, and Jonathan Barnes. Thank them in the beginning, touch on that at the end. And we're going to move into the part where we contextualize how we know this artist and why we are doing this album. Because if you've been a fan of Eyedea and Abilities since like 2001 and stuff, and you've been following
Since
this
the
forever,
beginning.
and you've been studying the depths of this album for like almost 20 years, you may have a different take on things than myself, who has listened to this album over the course of this week.
Yeah.
And has clocked maybe, and this was a higher end 7 or 8 listens per songs total, and at least half of them were distracted and half of them were like focused, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm just throwing that out there because I don't want to come off like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. A lot of this is just going to be my interpretation, and you may going, okay, then why are you doing this album? Well, because part of the Patreon deal is every couple weeks, every 3 weeks, you'll notice, they get a review request, and they almost always pick classic rap albums, so it's always this show that gets it. They could pick other
And we
genres.
don't mind.
They could. They choose this one. We comply. And they keep blowing our minds with amazing picks. Like, I can't say there's been a single Patreon pick where it was like, wow, this sucks. Which is like the fear, right? Like the fear of, in a sense, giving away requests like that. This is going to be garbage. But nope. Each of them has a distinct personality we've come to see with their requests.
Yeah.
But every
it's
single
like we can
time,
almost like tell, like if you gave us like, you know, 5 different random albums and told us whose is whose, we could probably figure it out.
Yeah, I would definitely have said this was the Ismail choice.
Yeah.
And if it had come out in 92, DJ Black Hurricane's choice. And if it was funky and weird, Wendell Williams' choice. I digress. That's not really the point of it all. So that's why we're doing this album. And I'm truly grateful we did because I mean, Ismail's been pressuring us to touch some idea for like a quick, long year type minute. So
Here you go.
yeah, it's kind of like we're doing it now. And I understand why he's been pushing us for so long. And I feel a little bit silly that this took so long to do. I mean, spoiler alert, I fucking love this album, so I'm pretty excited to get into it. I mean, Eyedea and Abilities is the name of the group, and it's just such a cool name. Eyedea, the mind, the like words, the song, abilities, the backdrop, the beats, the scratching, like the collective force of ideas and abilities, making an album. It's not often the name is cool enough of like the act to like touch on. Firstborn, this is their first album. It's like the conception of it, and they let you know for real that they is talking about this is their like embryo fetus coming to life. As you see on the cover, it's all black except for this cartoon drawing of a fetus inside of a womb ready to pop out and become the baby that is this album. And I mean, I like the cover. To me, it screams underground fucking like, this is not your corporate shit. Like, we like Nirvana, and we in that vein of shit, you know? And I like that.
Oh, yeah, true, yep.
I don't know.
It made me think of Isham, actually.
Okay.
Like, just like because of like his cover is also with like a fetus. And I don't know, it just made me think of him. But yeah, I mean, I also hadn't listened to him. I feel like we've stumbled upon the name before, like maybe like he's been featured on someone's album, or like maybe like you know, in research or whatever, like I've stumbled across the name and the person. But yeah, this is the first time ever actually listening to it, and so yeah.
He hasn't been featured on anything we've reviewed. I just double checked, but that's okay. I know I've seen the name, and I know he's affiliated with the label Rhymesayers, and it's unfortunate, but he passed away from some unfortunate circumstances back in 2010. And I just wanted to say, like, the whole rest in peace and show him respect to that, which I'm not gonna lie, it made me take this review like more seriously. I don't know what it is, but when an artist passes, it's almost like that's it, right? Like,
Yep.
this is the embodiment of their work, and somehow it makes it more special. And I don't know if that's just some weak ass I'm a human shit or what it is exactly that manifests that way, but say he was alive, I don't know that I would have tried quite as hard as I did, knowing that he had passed away and so many people like revered this shit, you know, in light of it all. So that was worth mentioning too, because
I think also like how he dies is also kind of worth mentioning. Is that it was because of opiates.
Yeah.
And like, you know, that's the unfortunate like side of a lot of the things that he's talking about in these songs. I mean, it wasn't like, I think it was, you know, it was accidental. Like it wasn't like a suicide or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll kind of like touch on like that kind of stuff once we get into the songs.
But yeah, it was an unfortunate thing, and
Yeah.
I mean, since then it's gotten to the point where Canada has PSAs up on YouTube saying,
Yeah. And all of the firemen, I think in Montreal, have now been taught how to handle somebody like having
for
like an
real.
OD
I
from
recently
opioids.
did first aid because it was through my work, so why not learn how to save lives? And it was a big part of it. Like, we barely touched on some other stuff like burns or whatever, but we spent a good bit of time talking about the whole Narcan situation and what to do and how to get one for free from the pharmacist and a bunch of shit. Like, it's for reals. The numbers are scary.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like, it's just, anyway, that's another conversation. Why don't we get into it? There's a whole lot of songs on this album, and, well, the first one is called One.
Some of the first record you ever made, and the underground MCs these days don't seem to make the grade. Too busy being big.
All right, Bonnie, how do you feel about this song?
Well, the intro bit is the world is my cave, and the cave molds the background of a picture painted by you. And like this is supposed to be like a reference to Plato's cave allegory. And I learned all about that in university. So if you don't know, like go like check it out. But it's interesting, and then it's something that he kind of refers to again like throughout the album. And anyways, and the beat is like hype. Abilities is clearly awesome. It sounds kind of like African hand drums or something. The music is louder than the lyrics, which is a nice kind of change from, you know, the other way around where the lyrics are louder than the music. Like this is definitely like a collaboration, and like each person takes their time to shine throughout this album. And I think that that's like a really cool thing that we're going to see. And so like that's kind of what they're saying, like with this one they're starting off like it's not just about the lyrics, it's also about like the music and like their creation of like the DJ's, you know, mix and everything. And then it kind of changes to like the sound of like wooden wind chimes or something like that, and then like halfway through like the beat drops and then like the rapping takes over, and then Eyedea sounds really cool. And like they're just kind of like new, like what they're saying is like that they're new and they're different sounding from like the mainstream stuff, but they're here and they're amazing and they're going to prove it to you with this like music. And they just feel like very much like partners and collaborators, like right from the get-go, like you kind of get that feeling. And it also feels very underground. I really thought it was like stellar. I thought it was really great. I really like DJ Abilities, but they're both cool AF. I get it a 4.75.
Yeah, I thought this was a really good, strong start to the project, and I think it does a couple of things, right? So by quoting a philosophical thing that like it's kind of obvious if you know what it is, but not obvious if you don't. just kind of lets you know it's going to be one of those albums where you're going to have to think about some shit. And also doing something like the Allegory of the Cave, where, you know, maybe I don't really remember what it's about.
It's about the caves and that you're stuck inside, and like you can only see like your shadows.
So I was gonna say it has something to do with perception, and your understanding of reality is limited to your environment. Is my base level understanding.
Yeah.
But what I thought was super cool is he kind of introduces, I think, himself in like the raw form of who he is as a person that we're going to explore, while simultaneously introducing the character of Eyedea, the rapper that we're going to have, as almost like both sides. So you have like this distorted, almost subdued vocal thing, but it's very spoken word, right? And I find like spoken word in a sense can be used to maybe break the fourth wall a little bit, in the sense of it's not the character, it's almost like the man behind speaking to you more empathically. Or empathetically, I don't know, whatever's right. And it's just what he's saying. Like, he kicks and screams and scratches at the time as it slowly passes by, only to laugh, which openly corrupts his mind. He strains to twist and bend the universe at his will, hoping to open the sky and seal off the present hell he exists in within a breath of his imagination. And then you're like, oh fuck. Once you've listened to the whole album, this is kind of maybe describing some of the anxiety and the more negative feelings that are going to be explored on this project. And I think that to a degree, this album is conceptual and story-like in its construction, following almost maybe his awakening as a person. What I mean is, I think as people, and especially in this day and age, we're really bad at it, but you're supposed to have the harsh awakening that life is fucking terrible, and you're supposed to become more conscious and aware. And at that point, there's a lot of things that are frustrating. That's a whole
other philosopher that thinks like that.
Yeah, but like, anyway, you just kind of embrace the reality of life, and if you do go on that path, I mean, you might end up feeling a little bit isolated and a little bit alone, especially amongst your peers who maybe don't want to join you on that path. This is something I can personally relate to. I mean, look at what I do in my spare time. I come and I review hip-hop albums on this quest to find universal truth. I read a bunch of books and kind of like learn. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm trying to say that there's not a lot of people willing to put that much passion for years, and if not longer, into self-growth and learning in my anecdotal experience. You on the internet may be that person. I mean, hell, you're watching this shit. You may be like-minded, and thus we are a kindred spirits.
There you go.
But if you really think about everybody in your life, how they choose to spend their time, all the different things they do with it, if you are one of those people that thirsts for knowledge and wisdom and efficiency and things like that, you may have a little bit of difficulty connecting with people and finding, you know, kind of whatever. And maybe however that is, it manifests into a hellish existence. It's almost like you're, you know, choosing not to stay in the matrix and go live in the real world, whereas everyone else is choosing to stay in the matrix, and you're frustrated by that. Anyway, I feel like that's some context I wanted to throw down that popped into my head as I go through this thing. But when you look at that little intro bit with that in mind, it's almost like he's showing this desire to escape and use his abilities and his imagination and his focus to like create some shit. Like, he has a vision. He is a vision. He isn't man. He lives for plan shifts as his numb lungs expand, equals a cool rush in the veins of play blame. You know, it almost feels like he's getting fucking high and crazed out in his mind while manifesting some shit. You know, the world is my cave, and the cave molds the background of a picture painted by you, following it up. It's before and after, so it's almost like stating like, look, understanding my little reality, and by shifting my perspective, almost like through the drugs, he breaks free in a sense. And I'm not implying that it's just the drugs. I believe this guy read a lot of shit too. Like, you can just tell that.
Well, I feel like right away that was something that I felt as well. That he's like an intelligent person,
19, 20, something really young at this point, and he might be smarter than I am at 31. And I'm like fucking taking my hat off to his brilliance. Like, I don't often feel like humbled by how smart a kid is. And I say a kid because at this point 20 feels kind of like a kid by comparison, but like fuck. And it's just such a well-crafted introduction. And then he slept with fate and found a corpse in his arms upon awakening. He tried to dance all life with doubt and found a virgin in the morning. And it's almost like foreshadowing, in a sense, I guess, what will happen on this project. He slept with fate and found a corpse in his arm upon awakening. It's like you gamble, you make a situation in life, you try to like figure it out. And again, this is my interpretation, and I've only thought about it for a few days. And like you wake up and you're left with the consequences of your action. You try to maybe, in this sense, have a better understanding of the universe, and you get slapped with the depression and the anxiety that comes with knowledge, you know. Tried to dance with life, dance all life with doubt, and found a virgin in the morning. Like, I don't know exactly what that means, but, you know, just to consider like having that skepticism and shit, and then maybe it prevents you from having some kinds of actual connections and experiences or depth with it, you know. That's the kind of stuff that it invokes, at least for me. And I know that if I were to think about this more and more, like, and understand its sources better, I'm not 100% sure I know about it. Oh, apparently, and I know I wanted to check Genius for some of this. Sometimes Genius is super useful, but he's referencing chapter 45 of Aleister Crowley's The Book of Lies, the original line by Crowley replaced by all the pronouns with I. And I'm like, man, that's some obscure shit. Maybe I should read that book, because I've never even fucking heard of it. But it's still like, its placement in the songs gets you to think about it, and it's like, wow, he's already done so much, and we're halfway through the intro, and I'm like, damn, Ismail, this is gonna be a long review. Bonnie's gonna fucking hate me. But it's like, how do you go backwards once you start getting longer with it and more in depth? How do you go back to like shallower reviews?
No, I hear you.
I personally could not make a review of a fucking anything that's short anymore. It's just I keep seeing more and more with it. Anyway, so it's almost like now we're gonna find out the consequences of testing fate and all that shit. And yo, it's time, and the beat drops and it kicks in, and it's like the stuff that he was thinking, that he was conceiving, almost the behind the scenes, fades in, and it's like the rapper hits the stage. Yo, it's time to clean MTV out of your ears. What a fucking strong start. If you think about it, that's a big claim that many people still make today, and now it's just Billboard or whatever it is, because I mean, MTV is producing some garbage content these days.
Yeah.
But the reason they stopped making music videos is because, or doing the music video thing, it was because it was costing too much money to pay licensing to the labels, as the declining record sales in the late 2000s proceeded to make it so that the record labels would do anything they could to squeeze money out of anybody they could in order to make back any kind of profit. And MTV was like, nah, it's just cheaper for us to produce a bunch of reality TV bullshit. Let's do that.
Yep.
So they did, and they made way more money, and MTV still lives to this day. Listen up like a good student. Eyedea Abilities is here to turn robotic chimp back into humans. I gotta speak until the facts get heard. I collapsed the last fractured nerve. This is more than just your average rapper's words. So, look at the bullshit that gets fed to you in the system, like, yo, fuck that MTV shit, representing pop, representing the branding of corporations that has infested the hip-hop music and the culture. He's here to spit the realest shit. Now, let it be said that his flow is erratically quick, and not in like a Tech 9 trying to floss kind of way, but more in a conversational, like he just has so much to fucking say, and it's just bursting out of his mouth in perfect rhythm. It's very smart, just the words he uses. This is like rap designed for me as a geeky white dude who loves thinking about deep shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, passing verbs and laughter hurts. The passengers in my head fly dead right. If a clash occurs, then ask it, sir, better luck next life, you know? And you get the sense that he's going to use his language to fuck up existing status quo of ideas and norms that have become a commonplace that he just does not stand for. And when I knew I was really going to be in for a treat is a little bit later on, when he goes, and the underground MCs these days don't seem to make the grade, too busy being bitter about their situation to create a greater way to break their chains to that phase. And I'm like, yo, that's exactly what I keep saying about underground MCs these days, who keep making the same damn fucking song about how mainstream rappers are trash. Or, like, for real, you go find me like 9 to 10 underground rappers, and I don't mean it, especially the faster variety, and often they're gonna have a checklist of certain things that you can identify in commonality that almost makes it pop within the sphere that it is. Because if that many people are doing it, is it really that underground, or has it
True.
become maybe pop? Like,
Yep.
maybe ironically dissing mainstream mumble rappers to be cool in your song, like everybody does it. Like, that's not cool or fresh no more. So the fact that this guy's both taking shots at the mainstream and at the underground, saying, look, I'm calling bullshit everywhere that I see it. It's like, I'm not here to make alliances. I'm not into the political bullshit. Hip-hop needs a truth sayer, and here I am to be that motherfucker, you know? And I really dug it, you know? And I like how he also goes into that, like, core elements of hip-hop, recognizing that it's more than just him. He's not an egotistical fucker. And I didn't come alone. Abilities annihilates the text while I wreck the microphone. We're in your zone, and to keep your earth warm and give you what you thirst for. This is turntablism and lyricism, imperialism, firstborn. And I really dug it. It's like we're here to like take over with this fresh brand of like reincarnating, like, honestly, the early essence of what the hip hop spirit kind of was. And it's something that, like, I've been thinking a bunch about as you listen to people grabbing beats from whoever and they just make all these songs and they throw them together. Maybe we need, like, maybe it's just because of Relapse and how brilliant I thought the concept was with just having M and Dre creating one album, and then you get this concept from Eyedea and Abilities making one album. And then if you look at like how many different examples, like Deltron 3030, which is having the same crew making the whole album, look how fleshed out that concept was. Maybe there's just something to having, we need that maybe more, just these little tight-knit crews that can flush out full concepts and less of this let's try and chart on Billboard and be number one mentality. Anyway, I thought this was pretty brilliant. I thought the rapping was tight. The beat was super weird but tight. And that's the thing. DJ Abilities makes this weird experience. I don't know that I heard a whole lot like it. And I think that makes it really cool.
Yeah, it's so
but
cool.
I also don't know if I 100% love it. I think I'm kind of torn between, this is so cool. Like, it's almost like an art piece to me to like look at this song. It is brilliantly made. I'm giving it a 4.5. Like, I like this a lot. I don't know if I'd put this on to vibe to, but I would put this on to think to, in a way where, like, if I want to be challenged and, like, this is going to go on my philosophy playlist kind of thing, where not a lot of people have really produced albums that were, like, that tight. Like, this is kind of like that Say Alone album, which was so next level with pushing your brain in terms of thinking, and I love that shit. Anyway, preferences aside, I guess that's enough for this one.
Let's talk about music.
I'm in search of the rhythm. Dove so first debate, Newton, it's a bit paid dues and
What a beautiful sounding song. Now, I love what Abilities did here. And I think what's really cool about this song is, you know, we've kind of been introduced maybe in the last one to the idea side of it all. And then it's almost like this is an ode to the music that is going to be his salvation point and his tool to escape his circumstances, right?
Okay.
And while he has his verses where he's like, I'll be right until I'm dead, or maybe till I'm alive, all the emptiness I bled only helped me survive. Something melted inside when the tone hits my pulse and stifled idle eagerness to grow into my clothes. And, you know, there's something like he's got these strong emotional feelings, and maybe life hasn't been good and he has this perseverance to get through. But, like, and we learn later on that he understands how to forge strength from these types of experiences. But really, when he heard the music and the beauty and the passion that came from it, it just, like, flipped his entire life, you know, into something else. Like, no one that I know is any longer good at acting. Like, to comprehend the motive, uncoded to feed the corroded passion, actually needs to stay eye level with the rest. That's the least I deserve for the love that I shed. And now it's like everybody's kind of got to be real, and maybe the circumstances in life are kind of shifting and whatnot, and maybe it's a little bit more challenging. Still, it flows real nice, and I find it really good to listen to, and you kind of get the sense that he's put in this grind, and he put in this effort, and he's forged this, like, entire relationship with the music in order to almost cope with his past experiences, but also excel at being authentic and fucking great with it. And it's like the universe's deepest art keeps my heart warm with influence. I tell you, ain't nothing quite as beautiful as music. Little break a whole second verse. And I like how he's like, to be an angel, you gotta earn your wings. To control your own, you gotta burn your strings. To hit blackjack, you gotta turn a king. But to live forever, all you gotta do is sing. And he's showing how, like, in all these other things, maybe there's compromises or sacrifices or luck that gets involved. But the truth is, immortality is found through singing. And when you really consider what happened to him and the fact that we're like sitting here talking about his album, like, I don't know, 18 years later, he's kind of right. I mean, they say that you die twice, right? When you die, and then the last time somebody says your name. So the fact that Eyedea has cultivated such a fan base of connected people willing to like keep his memory alive and shit almost proves the point of the lyric of what he was going for. Like, he had this compulsion to immortalize himself in a way where, like, he recognized how to do it. He looked at all the different options in life and then chose this. I get a pleasure that's inevitably immeasurable, and I won't let it be rejected by no man. Why does it have to be so damn difficult to live in a frame again that'll slit your throat? And then it's like he loves what he does and he creates this craft, but on the other hand of it, it's pretty fucking awful to be in this industry with, you know, the whole, you know, corruption that, you know, goes on with that. I mean, it's been well documented how it's a pretty cutthroat place back in that time before maybe YouTube sort of quasi-liberated people to do their own thing. Anyway, I like how he flows it out and how he like almost correlates music to other art, you know?
Yep.
See, I can look at a painting and admire the colors or appreciate any type of art that I discover, but what I dig's invisible. It's my teacher and I'm a student. I tell you, ain't nothing quite as beautiful as music. And I thought that was great because like I kind of almost relate to that shit. I can go in an art museum and appreciate what is in front of me, but really what my soul craves and connects with is the invisible essence of music, which if you think about is such a weird intangible art form. It's like an experience over time that gets repeated and like isn't captured in any way but your memory. It's not like a picture where you can just pull it up and like I guess it's always there. It's always there.
It's a little sound bit in your memory.
And then you can play that song again, sure, but you still can't touch it. You can't see. It's just something you can hear, which is crazy when you really consider how we
unless you
interact
see
with
the artist
world.
live.
Even to that end, you'll see the artist performing perhaps, and that creates part of the
Oh,
experience.
you don't see the song. Is what
You can't ever really see the song unless you're one of those people that can like hear colors and other weird
Unless you're
crap.
like high on like shrooms or whatever.
That could enhance your experience. But then what's crazy is as he's pointed out this whole thing and like maybe kind of confessing his relationship to music, which is a fitting follow-up to his declaration on other shit. He's alluding like, look, man, music is this pure and beautiful thing. The labels is fucked up. Don't fall for that MTV shit, etc., etc. And then here's my fucking point. And for like a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes, it's just DJ Abilities laying on us this absolutely gorgeous, well-composed experience that is just almost like you don't want to hear Eyedea anymore because you have abilities now. And I think that they kind of really exemplify the connection between them and their ability to create such a full experience, plus almost like the political point of just leaving open music to express like, yo, you don't believe me? Listen to this shit and tell me if your soul ain't get fucking moved, you know? Like you almost feel that like fuck you if you don't believe me type aggression to the way he like delivers it. And I'm saying it a little bit in jest,
Yeah.
but like it's like he's really proving his point, and I like this song. I like it a lot more. Like this is a brilliant, gorgeous piece of art in my opinion. It's fucking flawless. It's a 5 on 5.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, this is, you know, like music kind of gets him through his life, and it's a part of him. And it's kind of like creepy because, you know, he died, and I think that often, like, you know, like some of the things that he's talking about, like I think he is. I don't think he's going to live forever. I think that's what he thinks. And like I often feel that people that die young like feel that way. They feel that they're only going to be there for like a short time, and or people that, you know, have death imminent, like, you know, they often feel that like it is close, like they are going to die soon. So it's interesting that he kind of like touches on that, but it is also because he has some mental illnesses to like work through, and so like that can also have to do with it. But like the beat is really cool. His rhymes and like his voice, I guess, sound like an instrument, or at least like the way that it's paired next to like this like strumming that's in like the beat. It sounds so cool. Like it just sounds like his voice and like the instruments are one. Like it's really, really like that's good like work on both of their parts, and especially like the DJ's part. So you know, nothing is more beautiful, like you said, than music to him, and it's clear that he like truly loves it, and like it's like in his passion, it's in his soul, it's like, you know, it's everything that he talks about, and it's how he feels and everything. And there's also like this like 1970s like flute that's featured, like it's kind of like it's a throwback kind of sounding song. And it's basically just a song about their passion for music and how they understand its workings and like how it's composed. And it sounds to me like they've gone to like music school or something, or you know, that they've just studied it like a lot, like you know, like the theory, you know, like on their own time if they've done that. So that's like good for them if they did. It's very creative. It sounds kind of like creepy and eerie and sad all at the same time while still sounding so cool. And at the end there's like a message about someone going to see someone and look at pictures of fish, which flows like really like obviously very well into like the next track. So I thought this song was another cool one. I gave it a 4.5 on 5.
All right. And just in case you thought this album wasn't going to make you think, why don't we discuss the birth of a fish?
See through these two people, it seems to redeem freedom not being limited by walls, but that only means I qualify as.
See, I think the first two songs were maybe kind of like the intro to this story.
Okay.
Kind of like presenting, you know, in one, this is the top level characters, there's the man behind, there's Eyedea, who will both like encounter on this album. Music establishes the relationship of music and how it's being used as a medium and how he's going to use the music differently, etc. And then we're going to start off with the beginning of the story, which is with Birth of a Fish. So what did you think of this song?
This one like sounds very like simple and like in composition, but it's really cool and it works well together. Like I think I've got the gist of the story, and it's an interesting one. So he's talking to a fish in a tank, and the fish is kind of depressed, you know, because it misses like the ocean or the river or whatever. And like as much as he's free to swim around in the tank, he's still enclosed, he's still confined, he's still in a tank, even though he can see through it. Yeah, and everybody's kind of like comparing it, saying like everybody's confined in certain ways from certain things, and you know, until that they're able to break free. And it may look clear, but there's actually like walls around you sometimes, like and then like the story kind of switches things around, and it turns out that he's like the fish and he's being stared at in the tank, and like the wall is actually like around him and not around the fish. And it's basically just about like we are all trapped by our own realities, based off of like what we know and what we believe and what we're taught, and like, you know, our surroundings. So and it's like all just about like we're not able to like escape that until we like openly understand like the world and like embrace it, and just be like open to like accept new information and new stuff. So I think that's the gist of it. I thought it was cool. I thought the story was like interesting, like for as much as I was able to like understand. So I gave it a 4.75 on 5.
Yeah, so I mean, it starts off and it's just got this erratic feeling to the beat, like this different tone, like something's kind of weird or almost tenser, and it's like he just starts off describing this fish, like he lives in a 4x2 glass box that reminds me of my head. I wish my floor would have rocks, but it's covered with puddles instead. Now even then you can tell that maybe this is going to be a little bit describing your perception, because that glass box that this fish lives in reminds him of his head. Maybe that's just alluding to the perception, and that his head and anyway, the glass box represents the boundaries of perception.
Yeah.
And then he wishes his floor would have rocks, but it's covered with puddles, which could represent maybe the messiness, the pain, the darkness of the world. And rocks are more of a foundational thing, which is kind of at the bottom of a fish tank, and he doesn't have that. He's got whatever. If life could be him, life would be great. I could erase this permanent frown. And right off the jump, we look and we see him comparing himself to almost the simplicity of the fish. Like, he has such an easy little existence. He goes in there and he swims around, and he doesn't have any of the stresses or the problems or whatever. And then, he starts talking to the fish for some reason. He taps on the glass and he goes, he looked over at his way, and they gave me this depressed expression and pressed his best to say, besides the tides and the gray skies, it was okay. So it's like all of a sudden we're seeing how the fish isn't really happy with his existence or his circumstance. And he goes, existence is bliss. There's so much that you miss. Besides, get off the trip. Happiness is just a myth. And it's almost like the fish is being like, what are you going on about? You think my life's great over here? In my understanding of reality is that happiness, this thing you're chasing, this thing you're looking for, in my reality isn't even like there. It's just depressing. It's just awful. And, it's like, it kind of appears, and then the guy's like, it appears like I have freedom because I'm not bound by my fish tank, but honestly, I'm still bound by the confines of my life, my existence, as we all are. And then the fish laughs at him, and he goes, basically, so he interrupts the chuckle and puts the finger, and he boldly told me it's too bad he's such a thinker, right? And it's almost like pointing out how the guy, the person who I believe represents Eyedea, and the fish will represent, like, we'll just call it the different influences in his life. It's like you talk too much, you don't really listen, so you're not really getting the point of what I'm saying. So it's too bad you're such a thinker. So it's a compliment in the sense that you're a smart guy, but you're not really getting it. You're not really paying attention. And then you live in a head that reminds me of my glass box, and everyone's the same. Our brains are contained by a reality frame and chained to the terrain. It's trained not to change, and once you see what I've explained, you hit the jackpot. On that little portion of the song, we get the idea that he's like, look, everyone is bound to their own version of this little glass fishbowl thing, and you may believe you have freedom, you may believe different people have freedom, but at the end of the day, everybody's kind of a fish in a fishbowl playing into a bigger system.
Yep.
Now, this was interesting to me because I've had like an ongoing debate with a colleague of mine about the value in trying to make a difference in life. Where at like 31, I suppose my millennial ass still believes I can accomplish it. And maybe if I can do the right things over the next decade, we can save the world from the environmental crisis we're facing and several other things through smarter choices and better role models and leaders. I genuinely believe that shit. I believe God gave me gifts and I can do something with them. And I think more and more people are stepping up to the plate in that regard and shit, right? And his counter argument is a little bit more of, you can try, but there are people and things that are not fishes out there. And even what you think is wealthy and powerful is really just another fish with a bigger fishbowl and different boundaries and freedoms. There's really nobody that can make a difference, and almost like this more depressing outlook. In a sense, everybody is still bound by whatever the reality is. You look at the rich and the powerful, and they're bound by whatever limitations are put on them in order to keep that power. You look at the poor, they're bound by this, and everybody's bound by shit,
Yep.
And then all of a sudden he realizes he's not a man, he's a fish. He's really just like a fish. And I guess it's commenting a little bit on identity, right? As much as we all claim to have our identities and claim to try to be something different and maybe long for something more or maybe see something else, at the end of the day, we're all just fish in a fish box, really. And all of our labels that we used to define ourselves just change the size of that thing. And so in a sense, you are able to maybe if you can redefine how you perceive the world, redefine your reality. And so just like that, like while believing you weren't a fish, well, like it's just not real. Like you were so caught up in maybe thinking you're special, which is something that was going on, or something that still goes on. So you're so caught up in thinking you're special, you're not like the other people, you're not able to really recognize your humanity and what connects you to the world or anything like that. And then when you get over yourself and start to kind of look beyond what you once saw of yourself and really see maybe how you're similar to everyone else, or maybe how when you envied that thing really it's already inside of yourself, or maybe you hated that characteristic in a person but it's really because it's the one you don't like in yourself or whatever. And then it just goes to show you that your mind is your own monster. Reality is what you make it, and if you take it away, you're a fish like me swimming into powdered water. Powdered water is obviously something we're going to explore in the next couple of songs, but it could be look at like the chemicalization or the falsification of life. You know, water is an essential item, it's natural, right? But look at milk, it was also kind of a natural thing, and they synthesized it into powdered milk and such things. So in a sense they make powdered water, make it an essential thing we all have. And almost like what's in the water, how are we being influenced in it, even if it's not in a literal sense, from the way that the media and other such things kind of control the general population and our like choices. Like, let's be real, it's not surprising that people don't use condoms. If nobody uses condoms on TV, if nobody uses condoms in the music, well then why the fuck is anyone going to use condoms? Everybody's just telling people how it's more fun to fuck without a rubber. Oh yeah, but you might get a girl pregnant and catch the herp. Like, nobody's taking that lesson, because when you in that moment, you want the fun time, you know? Like, and I'm not saying everybody, but the metrics are the metrics. Our generation is trash with condoms. Why? Where was the influence saying maybe we should do it? Nah, there was all sorts of shit in play to make us all make stupid ass decisions and indebt ourselves and plenty of other garbage, you know? I digress. We're on track 3. All of this already. This is like really well thought out shit. I enjoyed this one a lot. I gave it a 4.5. I thought it was super nifty.
Well, speaking of powdered milk,
Powdered
next one
water.
is Powdered Water 2, Part 1.
Yeah.
Suggested they would only know the cubicle and not the world outside it, and they wouldn't view the cubicle as something to.
All right. How do you feel about Powdered Water?
So it starts off and there's more Plato references. So obviously, like, he really likes him, or maybe he just like read his book recently or something. The music and like the beat or whatever, it sounds like something you would hear at like a museum, like floating through things. Like, it's just like these really cool sounds. Like, I cannot tell you how much DJ Ability is cool. Like, and then and then Eyedea is there, and he's talking about if you live in a cubicle, then you will never explore beyond that. And like, and you'll feel like comfortable and safe because like that's where you are in like your cubicle, but then you're also limiting yourself in terms of like ideas, creativity, knowledge, travel, like understanding, like it's kind of like a meaning for like many other things that it could mean. And it is kind of similar to the last song in terms of like being trapped and like staying within like the walls of like where you are. And I have some of the lyrics that I thought were kind of interesting. We don't know the rules of our heads from inside these cubicles. We can't see the truth. No one really knows exactly what happens when we think. Therefore, we can never really know anything. And I think that's very true. It's like the brain is like one of like humans' greatest mysteries. Like, it's just nobody really understands like how the whole thing works. And like, even though there's scientists that have been staring at the brain for years, so it's interesting to see that there's still so much we don't know. And I think this is like basically like kind of like how small we are, and kind of like how like insignificant we are, and also like how so many of us are fearful and hesitant to be curious and kind of explore things and like new ideas, new concepts, new everything. And it's just about like taking chances, and I think it sounds really cool. So I gave this a 4.35.
So yeah, I think it totally follows in part from the last song, right? Because the last line of the last song introduces the concept of powdered water. So I think on his own journey, right, inside of himself, he recognized, holy shit, like society is kind of brainwashed, and moving into like exploring his own perceptions and relative perceptions, right? So if someone grew up in a cubicle, as Plato once suggested, they would only know the cubicle and not the world outside it. And they wouldn't view the cubicle as something geometric. We only know it's a cubicle because we live outside it. So just kind of putting into perspective that the only reason we can even understand things are the way that they are is simply because of our observation of those things from being outside of it. Like, if in a sense inside of this little glass of water here there's an entire universe, right? We'd be able to see it and we would know that it's confined to a glass of water. We would understand that as people only because we're bigger than this glass of water. But if we were like a microscopic citizen of that universe, it is relative to believing like they could just, like, it could be as populated as Earth in there.
It's like Horton Hears a Who.
Yeah. And then in a sense, its understanding is it's the center of everything. But really, it's just inside of a glass of water, inside of a bigger thing. And so...
Are we trapped right now? Are we just inside of something that's inside of something else?
I mean, it's entirely possible. This guy sends you on some fucking mindfucks with that kind of subject matter.
Yep.
But, and basically looking into almost the parameters of our lives, and everything is so defined by the rules of what we understand. May I just say that the whole song has like if someone grew up in a cubicle, as Plato once suggested, and it has like that kind of this weird, obnoxious singiness to it, but not in a way that's bad, in a way where it's almost like...
You get hooked on it.
But it's almost like he's being a little comical with the subject matter to elaborate his point. Like, it is a little bit of a silly twist on some regular things, but redefining it in like a way where it feels a bit like a wavy mindfuck. Plus, you have this little intro bit that's all instrumental. It's like setting you up like a bit of an overture for this transitionary thing. And then he kind of takes the idea of the cubicle and translates it to his own life and his own universe and his own understanding. And what I really like is, if you follow what I say and can swallow the powdered water, close your eyes and open up your minds, this one's for you. So I believe what he's trying to point out is, if you're one of those people that still believe in the bullshit of society and still drink the powdered water, still accept what is being fed to you, but you're able to understand simultaneously what this dude's saying, then close your, like, be pensive. It's time for you to come on this whole journey throughout this story and go through your own little transition into enlightenment, in a sense. And you can see that tactic being used in different places on the internet, where people will essentially just write it in a way that will appeal almost to, like, let's say you're a newfound intellectual. This is definitely here to maybe guide you and gear you on your own journey so that you can not end up being just another pop fucking brand of what a university's spitting, and you can spit the truth but not lose your soul throughout it, etc. I love when he's like, realizing the brain takes in 6 billion signals per second, most of which are hidden and not given to the senses. We're limited to the feudal primitive tools of perception, living in a universal pool of first-hand deception. I was like, holy shit. So it's true, right? Because if you think about all of the different things, the stimuli, the sounds, the smells, and how your brain just filters everything out. Like, there's trucks in the background, but we're not really focusing on it. I'm certain that there's all these little bzz kind of sounds going off that I don't even hear anymore. All sorts of crazy shit. And the fact is your brain is an imperfect tool when it comes to taking in this kind of perception. It sucks. Like, look at the way our memories absorb that information after the fact. It's trash. We could live through the same moment, you and I. Hell, I could be here, and you person watching this, if we were to say, what did Holden say? We would both get it wrong if we tried to remember it verbatim, unless you happen to be like fucking photogenic with your memory.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give an example of how fucking bad all of our senses are. And then when you compare it to the fact that we live in a world of deception, where everyone's trying to mislead you, marketings and corporate executives trying to get paid, and motherfuckers who are just trying to feed their family, and this entire Americanized live first, fuck the every other person mentality, you know, the way the American dream is manifested in the present day. It's just like, damn, that is really, like, there's so much being communicated in those 4 little lines there. And I'm like really happy going through it, you know. The next verse is like, physics, it exists and you can learn physics, and
Yep.
then what's real is real. You know what's fucked up about physics? And I'm certain that any physicist out there watching is going to be like, shut the fuck up, you're talking shit. But like the idea of like how 90% of solid mass and shit or some crazy amount is like just space, right? Like this is just a bunch of molecules held together with electromagnetic forces and crap, creating a physical bound based on the motion of all the bullshits.
Yep.
But the fact that at a base level the motherfucking shit is like 90% space is a mindfuck of faith that I know it to be true because physics has told me that shit, but it's only on the menu because our brains tell us shit's real. All of it's there. Like we only believe in electrons, etc., because of what we were able to detect. And science is fucking crazy like that. Not to say science is bad, but so much of this is faith-based, based on what we've tracked and perceived and understood. And Bonnie's like, holy fuck, this is gonna take forever, this review. I can't help it. It's just there's this much to talk about, in my opinion. It's not often where like there's so many ideas that are so like interesting.
It's his name, right?
I know, but like, okay, like of all the albums we reviewed, it's not so often where like almost line by line it's introducing like newer concepts and ideas that almost expand on the last point and bring up something so we're talking about. Plus, I already think about this kind of shit all the time. I couldn't help it. It's like, Ismail picked this one for me. It's so fucking good. We don't know the rules of our heads from inside these cubicles. We can't see the truth. No one really knows exactly what happens when we think. Therefore, you said that part. It's fucking cool.
Yep.
Bonnie's right. And then this is a consciousness revolution. You got the right to think. Don't think about it. Just do it. And that little end part kind of shows almost like, wake the fuck up. Use this noggin of yours and see past what's out there. Understand that everything you've believed in up until this point is the cubicles of your life, whatever it's defined as. And you need to see almost bigger than that. And if you listen to all the success gurus of today, all the different self-help for CEO books and self-help books in general, all of this shit always comes down to the same base point. Visualize the future real far away. Figure out what you need to do to get there. And then kind of do that. But the first step of that is on par with what he's saying there. Break the walls of your cubicle. I know I'm going in, but let's think about poverty. People born in the kind of realms of poverty have what I like to coin as poor people thinking. I grew up in a poverty type of environment, and all you see around is people who don't dream, people who don't consider vacations, people who, instead of saving their money, are willing to spend $50 on an ordered meal because fuck it, this is all we have type shit. When really, if you'd saved up all that money, you could have gone to the all-exclusive super vacation and had like 50 ordered meals for free type thing. Anyway, just the way you conceive the universe is so much based on your environment.
Yeah.
And with so many people coming from a less fortunate circumstance, it's important to know that you can reshape how you think some shit. It's such an important part of going through that kind of a spiritual awakening, I think, which is why I thought it was so fucking dope. I gave it a 4.75 on 5. It was cool. Anyway.
Let's check out part 2.
Yeah, Powdered Water 2.
It leans lopsided, but eerie enough, I still treasure it dearly. Born in a vocal booth.
Alright, Bonnie, what do you think about part 2?
Like, again, we've got like a cool beat. His rhymes are really tight. I wasn't sure if I got like the overall message on this one. Like I felt it was a little like maybe I just didn't catch it. I don't know what it was. The mixing is also like a lot of scratching and like at one point, and it kind of hurt to listen to, but at the same time was kind of like wild and cool. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then we have like the beat like changes and it becomes kind of more slow and more jazzy, and it's almost like a bit like seductive almost. Like it kind of sounds like, you know, like it's walking away into like a cloud of like smoke and darkness and like sexily like disappears like into it, and you want to like go after it and find it. Like it's that kind of feeling that it kind of like at least gave me. And like that's like a very like random like feeling, but I mean it's pretty cool that he was able to like stir that up inside. And then I think he's also kind of talking about like mental illness kind of and like what's going on. And like I said, the message was a little bit unclear for me. So maybe you can kind of like dive in on that a little bit better.
Maybe.
But for me, like this again, like abilities, it's super cool. He's clearly skilled in like what he does. I gave this a 4.2 on 5.
So I love how it just starts with think models, think metaphor, right off the jump, right? And it gets me, what's a model? So you might be going, why? It's an attractive person who looks fun to look at. And why? Yes, you'd be correct. That is a model. It's also like a way of thinking.
And I don't think that's quite what it is. A model is someone that wears something that
Somebody
is
gets
showing you how
Anyways.
to wear something.
Sure.
It's not something fun to look at purposely.
Sure, it's showing off some shit and whatever. You're displaying the person and it's like whatever. But it's also like a set of rules that defines kind of anything. So like the model, a business theory would be governed by some economic model that would, allow you to make your predictions or whatever.
Okay.
So you got to think in terms of the models of the mind, and then think metaphor. Like you got to be more abstract. You have to break away from the traditional molds that hold us all together. And like again, we're 4 words in, and he's already got my noggin going. I think this song is really thematically similar to Kanye West going on about how bipolar is his superpower and it allows him to be something greater. And I don't want to I don't want to make suppositions like I know 100%, but he starts off by, I am plagued by a yet to be defined mind disorder. Symptoms include illusion to losing the tissue and fluid that border a bruise, contour to lose core of my aura, among other things that clutter dreams and suddenly pull my swollen puppet strings. And I almost get the sense, and I might be wrong, but like he's got something maybe off. Like, maybe borderline personality disorder wasn't popular back then or some shit like that. And he doesn't, maybe it's not defined, or maybe he hasn't gone to talk to a therapist out of some fear of what will be done to him because, the consequences of pharmaceuticals personally scare the shit out of me. But symptoms of his disorder include illusion to losing the tissue and fluid that order a bruise, contour to lose core of my aura, among other things, So it's almost like he's not willing. Like he's kind of like caught up in like that illusion word is just crazy, right? Because it's like he's believing this, and then it's that he can kind of maybe escape, the different things that are kind of bringing him down and holding him back and whatnot. And it's just so well written and it's so like well put together that there are a series of issues that control him, and maybe one day he can like break free. I took from that because I do think that this album is kind of documenting the process of him coming to terms with these emotions and understanding how to deal with it. Please pour the powdered water from the kettle, unload my cup full of adrenaline. Now I can settle and talk between the sheetrock and crushed ice. She knocked, but I never let her in despite the fact she looked nice and black. So I get the sense that like he, instead of maybe drinking the Kool-Aid as everyone else did, chose to go more of the hard shot adrenaline of truth and intensity, and he can kind of be like ready for the harshness because he turned away the temptation of going down the path of maybe a sexier, easier life. Anyway, and then I just kind of got the sense of the rest of it, like that he's got like a little bit of a battle going on. Like corrosion grew for 8 months and the Trojan threw a fake punch and a crow to fool him. I've sold my sanctuary, thank you very much. Buried all I can for a vocabulary rush, and I don't want to be around when the cherry busts, because when it does, the suds will flood all of America. It's almost like maybe he's seeing now the cracks in the system of shit, and maybe it's overwhelming on him, and there's certain temptations and certain things that are distracting him from his focus, because at the end of the day he's trying to escape it all because he doesn't necessarily want to be around when the shit hits the fan, or like when a guy like maybe Donald Trump gets elected, in that kind of regard.
Right, yeah.
I had to look at where Minneapolis and all that shit was. I didn't realize it was so close to Canada and it was like a border state.
Minneapolis isn't a state.
I know it's a city in whatever.
I thought it was from Missouri.
Missouri, maybe.
Hold on.
Is it not? Is it not?
Well,
I don't know.
I was just looking at it.
Either way, I looked at where he was from,
St.
and that
Paul.
state is from right on the border of Canada, if I'm not mistaken. And I was looking at that. I hope I'm
Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota.
not. Is that on the border of Canada? Because that's what I looked. That's what I was trying to convey. I do not know my U.S. geography. All right, it wasn't important in my life until I started reviewing rappers from all over the fucking states.
Yeah.
It does border Canada.
Yeah.
Dope. I was right about that.
Borders Canada and Lake Superior.
So yeah, anyway, if it's the water, is it real? How does it make you feel? Being endlessly dependent on external crutches and shields. That's another thing, you know, like how much of our life is like chemically induced. Like, I'll be honest with you, caffeine and maybe a couple other things definitely enhance my ability to be a day-to-day person and with the way I live. But like, when you think about it, there's so much of our life that's almost unnatural that we use to mask some shit to maybe either drink the water or to escape drinking the water in general, or maybe to even be aware that you're drinking this powdered water, and how do you cope with that whole situation. But open your eyes. And then at the end, it's like, this song's become an endless note for all women and men with hope. Open your eyes. You no longer can float. You're sinking and drinking the powdered water. Go make you choke. So it's like, you need to be aware of the truth of the situation. You need to be aware of it, because we're all drinking this powdered water, and at the end of the day, by consuming it, you're going to choke. It's not really water, it's powder, right? It's not really going to hydrate you and shit.
Yeah.
It's poison in a sense, and everybody's sinking, but you have to open your eyes so that you can be aware of this shit and maybe not consume the powdered water. So I think in the first sense, part one is kind of showing how our whole existence is defined by these cubicles, or these certain models of existence that are induced by the powdered water. And then in part two, you're transitioning into, you're kind of almost branded as mentally ill if you choose to think different than these subscribed norms. You're a weirdo, you're an outcast, you're something different, really, because you're trying to see the truth of a situation. And so part two is about, like, not consuming it and understanding that this is the reality of a situation, but just describing it. And then I feel like we go into his journey of trying to like cope with this situation as the following songs play on. Either way, I really enjoyed this song. I gave it a 4.5 on 5. I thought it was super fucking cool.
Yeah.
So I guess the next one is called Color My World Mine.
Wow, we grew content, so we thought it's just a dream, and kept living his life right in this.
I forgot to say at the end of Powdered Water 2, it ends on like this instrumental kind of note that serves as almost like a more peaceful like outro. I felt that was almost like, okay, I've gotten to the next place. What's next,
Okay.
Moving into this track, which if you want to talk about it, your lady friend, Bonnie.
Sure. So it has a cool beat as usual. Story about a guy that he knew, or that he used to know, who used art as a way to express himself, and like that was, he really was a true artist, and he used that, his reality to create his art. And he had a dream, and it sounded like he got like very depressed in the dream, and had the idea to kill himself, and so he kept jumping off of a building in his dream and killing himself that way, and then he kind of got used to this like recurring dream that just kept happening, and like the feelings and everything else that comes along with it, and like the panic and whatever else I'm sure that comes with it as well, to make his art. And like that's how he was able to like express himself and get that out of him, and to feel like connected to something on earth. And I think it's also like the struggles with God, it seems, which is kind of interesting. And then in like the next part, which I felt kind of pretty interesting as well, is that he saw like his whole life and like the whole dream like in a painting. Like he saw the whole thing kind of come to fruition, and it was his dream. And like I can imagine that being like pretty freaky. And then he also like refers it to or compares it to like reading a book about your own thoughts, or like your own whatever, and it wasn't you that wrote it. Like it would be pretty freaky if you were to read that and like you're reading about your own life or something. And because of him seeing this, he's like disconnected with God and people, and painted himself. And I think that that's pretty much what every artist does in their work, no matter what it is. They put themselves into it, and I think that's how it gets created and how everybody's art is different. And he taught himself to like not dream, to not have these dreams, and to which is maybe like what I don't know, like maybe like because he didn't want to like feel depressed anymore, but like then I think he's also missing like his inspiration for his art, and so he's trying to like suppress himself from dreaming, and like maybe that's he started taking medication or something like to try and like suppress it and try to like hide those feelings, but then he's not able to like create his artwork. So it seems to be also like another story kind of, or another theme that's mixed in with like the mental illness, that's kind of like in a lot of his lyrics. So I found this one kind of slow, and it's about 6 minutes long, so it's a little bit long, but I felt like it was a good story, and it was well made from both sides, both team members. So I gave it a 4.25.
I really like this one because it did that thing that the rest of this album has been doing. It got me thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first verse, I mean, his rhyming is very calmer. It's not so flossy. He's meant to make you think. Like he's trying to write like a modern philosophy poem. And I remember recently in something I wrote, I was like, I want more philosophy and shit. Well, Eyedea is doing it here. But what I like about it is rather than just being like, yo, Nietzsche this, or, Deschamps that. I hope Deschamps a person. I don't fucking know philosophy like I should. Descartes,
yeah.
a one.
Just say Bacon. Bacon works.
I forgot about Francis.
Hobbes.
So yeah, instead of just like making more of a vapid top level like referencing it type thing, it's almost like he read all of this shit, was inspired by a bunch of stories, and is in a sense trying to add to the philosophical grander conversation by creating this piece of art, this album, which is it's his philosophy book. And I'm like, that's hella fresh. Yep. So part of that is to maybe look at the concept of what happens when you face understanding. So if you look at it, I once met a man who trained himself not to dream. What he seems to have seen was a glimpse of everything. And he's been painting a canvas since the age of 13 and claims he only exists in the mind of a higher being. So maybe this has to deal with God or purpose or the point of life. Because so many of us struggle fundamentally with what is the purpose of life. And we use something like God as a guiding force to get through it. But we all feel like there's a purpose or a reason to live or anything like that. And in this sense, what I believe this song is, what we come to see is when he goes through and he describes his dream later on and how horrible it was, and he would always be painting out these landscapes for the longest time to try to understand this dream and to make sense of it or whatever, and maybe on this purpose to understand, so that nightmare maybe represents that deeper level of understanding of the universe that so many of us crave and want, the answers to the questions. But if we go back to that famous saying, you can't handle the truth. And that is so true about so many of us as people, right?
Yeah.
So then like it has the little hook. It was only to witness his dead body laying on some. He once saw a painting that told his whole life story. It was then he knew that he was the art of divinity. He once saw a painting that told his whole life story. A brushstroke of the gods made him one note of their symphony. And it was more like, okay, so once he saw, then we find out in the second verse, he goes and he sees this painting that is his dream, that represents his whole life, and everything just synced up so perfectly. It got his mind running with it. Well, what if everything in my life is really just this decided by God? I'm just an actor in this God's fucking play, and everything's already been decided. And when he created his piece of art, we are all the actors inside of this universe. They're all his art creation. In a sense, when he creates a piece of art, there's somebody inside of that little universe that doesn't realize that they've been only created by his imagination. And so by creating art and doing all of these things, it's almost like playing God.
Yep.
So on the one hand, I think the song is commenting that, in a sense, creating art is creating to that level, and who knows that we aren't all like in some other simulation or some art piece or something like that. But on the other hand, I think it's saying that when you do get that answer and you have that understanding of everything, it's so overwhelming, it's so powerful, it's something that you can't even really understand, and then like it maybe fucks you up and it's a hard thing. But another thing I liked about the hook is it's not that he didn't believe, he just didn't approve of God. His experience is one I couldn't comprehend till I stopped being detective and listened to him as a friend, he said. And then he went and, told about how he drew the painting of his whole life story and realized I'm not real, God just imagined me. And I think that's the second time already on this album that essentially he's saying, shut the fuck up and listen. Because so often in our preconceived ideas, like you think a lot, you're not willing to hear out what maybe the wiser and the older have said about our circumstances. And he said already that he's writing this for a certain kind of person who can definitely benefit from hearing the message. So lacing in the idea that you need to listen to things you don't understand to have a greater understanding of reality is very key and actually really cool. But either way, I think it's playing with that when you do, like, because again, the previous songs on this project have kind of led towards embracing this new understanding, this mental illness of seeing through the powdered milk and breaking that almost fourth wall of reality into the deeper understanding. And maybe it's pointing out that when you get there, it's maybe not the nicest thing to encounter. And this is a bit of a warning saying it will fuck you up. To a point where, in this case, this guy just stopped dreaming. So in a sense, you have to be ready for it, and it's going to be a challenging experience. And, I don't think it's saying do it or not. I'm saying be warned. When you stop drinking the powdered water, this is what's going to happen. And in that obsessive, and it shows almost this obsessive quest to find it through painting over and over again, the same landscape to understand it until you finally do. And then it's like, yo, I'm done. It's not worth it anymore. And I think that's almost like a parallel to what happens on so many people's journey as they try to understand more things. I thought, again, it was conceptually next level with this. If we're all just part of God's art creation or not, it's a 4.5 on 5. He raps it out so well. And a thing I like about it is that he's proven he can do the fast, crazy shit, but he's also now proving he can slow down and show us a more controlled, meaningful flow on top of things where it's like the emotional tone is shifted. Like this honestly felt like, okay, it's not the frantic pacings of my inner musings. It's like grandpa sat me down to teach me a lesson about what's going on. So it slowed down to match that shit, which I thought was pretty cool too. Anyway, that's enough about this one. The next track is about liquid sovereignty.
Have the flame. Some are content holding ground in their game, but when my soul steps to
I think it can be said pretty quick that when he describes rain here, he really means another 4-letter word. And that 4-letter word even shares 3 of the same letters as rain, the A, the I, and the N, but we're going to change that R for a P. And he means pain. This was an interesting song, like just sonically. It was such a transition from what we've heard. The entire track has like basically one melodic flow over and over again, like rain, everyone wants to get out of the rain, wants to be free, wants to see no more pain, and it just does that the whole way through.
The whole song essentially, most of it rhymes with rain.
And he's not like necessarily trying to make every line unique or even try to be flossy with it. He's trying to tell his story, and it has to do with this whole bigger picture of the album. So we've taken a look now at the idea that the truth is a hard thing to handle. In a sense, we can say it's painful. That's what we learned in the last thing, is maybe it's too painful for some people to handle. And so maybe now we're thinking about pain in general. So rain, everyone wants to get out of the rain, wants to be free, wants to see no more pain. We're guaranteed that the seasons will change. Till then, I'm keeping sunshine on my brain. When the drops hit my head, they leave a stain. Everyone tries to get out the rain. So it's like, it's true. Most people live in a way where we try to dodge the different crises and negative things that can transpire in our life. We try to avoid pain and embrace comfort at all cost, to a point where many folk will settle.
To our own detriment.
like for mediocrity and not challenge themselves. And in a sense, these people will drink the powdered water of life because it allows you to alleviate the pain of knowing what it is to be like, well, just awareness. Like if you go read about human history and really look at how horrible humanity has been, not even that long ago, go back 100 years, and how bad it really, really was to be human back then in most parts of the world. And you look at all the bad shit today, and it's kind of nice by comparison. I know it sounds really callous to make that kind of a claim because there's so many atrocities that are going on and so many awful things are happening. But when you compare it to like how it was like 500 years ago, it's really mild. Like, it's mild. Just consider the death toll of World War II. All the total death toll of all people who've died in armed conflict since World War II is less than that of World War II in a significant way. Just to add like context for how bad shit was, or just World War One,
or like the fucking plague, like that wiped out like what, more than a third of like Europe.
Anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is, even in light of understanding all of this, which is a painful process to get to a point and being able to look at the dark history and seeing the terrible shit we've done. And like, I think a lot of the premise of this white guilt norm that is happening today is that a lot of people who are living in their cubicles of life are having their little reality shattered, and part of your history is probably really shitty. And that's the thing. Like, if you're a Caucasian male, like, there's a good chance that you're part of a group of people that did some terrible things over history. Did you do terrible things? I don't know. But you definitely benefited from a lot of white dudes doing terrible things over history. And then cross-sectionality kicks in and it gets super complex and whatnot.
Can I just say at this moment in time about Eyedea and Abilities? I was a little bit shocked that they were white.
He's Lebanese and Irish.
Yeah, like, I mean, I was not, you know, so I thought that was pretty interesting.
I think I just knew that because I'd seen pictures of them on the internet prior to doing this review.
Like, I listened to the album
also,
and then I went and like checked them out.
I hear rhyme sayers and I picture, and this might be like off because I know Dim Atlas is there, but I picture lyrical, philosophical white guys when I think of rhyme sayers as a label in general. Like, I mean, I guess Brother Ali's
well, once I found out, like, you know, they were from like Minnesota, I was like, well, yeah, it makes sense that they're white.
But yeah, so all that correlates back to like the idea of people, instead of maybe embracing the dark, terrible shit of our history, to even learn from it, even to be able to have the self-awareness within yourself, because it's a painful process to be honest with yourself about half the criticisms you get about your personality are probably really true. And if you want to grow, you have to adapt to that type of shit. I mean, for the first year of doing this YouTube thing, reading the "you're an asshole" comments really pissed me off. But then after a year being called an asshole, I was like, maybe I'm being an asshole. And now, typically, for the most part, you guys aren't calling me an asshole anymore. So anyway, but that process was super painful. And when I was being petty about it, it was my way of getting out of the rain. Because, you know, you're just, and then if you look at the guaranteed that seasons will change bit, I know I'm going on for a bit here, but like, something you see a lot is people are tired of waiting. That is just something that everybody says. Like, I'm tired of waiting for my circumstances in life to change, as though somehow just sitting on your thumbs, like all of a sudden the golden opportunity is going to be falling into your lap, you know? And so by the sense that you're told and promised from the sense of youth, and in that powdered water kind of way, that, oh, if you keep your head up and you just keep trucking along, shit's going to get better. And it's almost like we're brainwashed. But then when the pain hits you, because, you know, we're trying to stay positive and keep the sunshine on your brain, each of these painful drops leave a stain, making us a little bit more jaded and dark over time. And then in these verses, I think it looks at the impact of rain/pain. Harvested love only comes after rain. So the truth is, you can only really get to those points of proper forged connections with people after pain. It's only after you've gone through some shit that maybe you can really decide if you even love that person enough to deal with that pain with them. Even though it brings overwhelming strain, it falls from the sky, so I can't complain. Without it, our growth would not be the same. And pain is such a crucial part of growth. Wisdom is the art of looking at your mistakes and the problems and the things that have happened, the misfortune in your life, and growing from it. And understanding, I did this shitty shit. Maybe I didn't let Chris talk and I told him off on a whole bunch of podcasts, and that maybe made a lot of people not want to come back to my channel. That might be a consequence of that shit. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe nobody wants to watch because we don't do that anymore. Maybe that's also true. Still, without the painful experience of reading those comments and going through the process of growing, I'm just trying to keep it related to shit y'all can connect to.
Well, I'm glad that you have
That's great.
stepped it up.
I know how you feel. Like, you know, you wouldn't be able to grow effectively by having to take those painful realities like these people are right. I am being wrong in how I'm treating people. And a few people were really apt, like you're treating him poorly. It's not even funny. It's just you were being mean for the sake of being mean, which wasn't okay as a person, regardless of what's entertaining for an audience, you know? And then it only makes up half of the yin and the yang. Like, without water, you can't have flame. So it's almost like pointing out this world is a balance. You can't be happy if there's no pain. And then he kind of points it out again and again, like, storm is prerequisite to mental gain. Philosophy's like that, simple and plain. Poets play with words to keep themselves sane. You do your thing while the clouds pour and then the rain kicks in. Mm-hmm. So honestly, all that, you know, look, it's just kind of pointing out that most people who embrace the pain and pour it out into these words and create our art and all of this shit is just people who accept the pain and learn to grow with the pain and learn through it, because it's unavoidable. But I don't know, in the third verse, harvested skill only comes after rain. Architects build under sun, so they claim, but when the puddles decide to hang is when their hands sketch the plans that remain. And it's kind of pointing out that end of the day, we all need the pain. Like, he owes his success to the pain. And it's something even within myself. Like, I make music. I'm not really here to toot my own horn about that. But the bulk of what I've ever written stems from all of the pain I felt in my life. I'm not saying my life was exceptionally hard compared to some of the stories I've heard. But compared to some of your stories, my life is probably a lot harder than yours might have been. And again, it's all relative, blah, blah, blah. But through that pain, I have conceived some crazy, interesting growth opportunities, observations, and ideas. And as I continue to embrace the pain of being a fucking adult millennial in 2019 and all the shit that comes with that, instead of hiding from it, looking at the scammers of the condominiums and how all of my friends are, not all of my friends, a bunch of acquaintances of people I've met are trading away their freedom for shares in a holding company. It's just, but they believe they're buying land and all the crap that just goes into the marketing of people my age to keep us down and accepting of our bullshit 2.5% wage increase, which, like, basically Canada's made inflation, which means nobody's made a real increase in wages since I've been in the labor force. That's over 10 years.
Well, I mean, they've increased, like, minimum wage and stuff, and, like, they have just increased it to, like, what, $15 an hour?
But that's because they had to. But if you look at everyone else's salaries, it's 2.5% year over year over year over year. Mm-hmm. Maybe it'll be 3, maybe it'll be 2. But those aren't real numbers. Let me break it down to you, folks. 2.5% at $50,000 is 60 cents an hour. If you want to break it down, that means a person who gets $1 an hour wage is getting a better raise than people who get a 2.5% raise at pretty much anything under $65,000-$70,000 a year. This is just math. I'm not making this shit up. You can run those numbers yourself. So understand that at least in my country, nobody's making money outside of the wealth. We're all kind of struggling together. Anyway, I don't even remember why I started talking about money, but end of the day, this was fucking dope. This was a cool song. I mean, at first it's kind of like repetitive, and in a sense maybe it takes a second to get into, but I feel like it's kind of part of the point. It's the monotony and grinding like repetitious experience of the rain which is a good metaphor for pain because it's always going to come back. And in a sense, rain can fuck up your day. I find rain beautiful. Some people don't, in a way where pain can be found to be beautiful and other people don't. Anyway, 4.5 on 5. This is going to be a pretty consistent album, in my opinion, because while stuff has changed, the quality of the rhymes and the poetry and the intense messaging has not altered at all. And the quality of production from Mr. Abilities is next level.
Yep. So like there's like a rain falling like sound like in the background. Basically everybody wants to get out of the rain, but the rain brings goodness. And I agree with you. I think it's basically about like escaping like bad times. And like he's talking about like you have to like try new things and like that's how you're going to grow. And I really like the rhymes. I really like how they flow together. I really like how everything kind of like rhymes with rain. And it was really cool to kind of hear that in like one song, like to have like the whole thing flowing and sounding the same. And basically the storm comes before like the breakthroughs and, like keep sunshine on your mind, he says. And again, kind of sounds like he's trying to educate and be like a motivator for like those that have like are struggling with like mental illnesses or having tough times, and I think he's trying to like help people through that, and I think he's trying to be like a mentor by like openly talking about like all of these issues. I mean, this is 2001. This isn't 2017 where everybody was talking about it, and
that's a really great point.
So like this is like he's openly talking about all these things, and it probably was kind of like there's all this stuff going on. So it's interesting that he's talking about that and he's struggling, but he's kind of letting like keep going, like work it through, and like you'll get to that sunshine, you'll get to like that great spot. And I think he's kind of talking as somebody who's on the other side, somebody who's living like the happy life, has gone through this shit, and is kind of talking about it from experience. So I think that that's kind of great that he can talk about it personally and say like, this is what I went through and I know what you're going through, and like, hey, like you'll get there. So I think it's overall a pretty great message. I gave it a 4.5 on 5.
All right, the next one takes it even more serious, in my opinion, as we talk about a murder of memories.
What's the gain? Nothing's left but the slug that remains in its right half.
All right, Bonnie, I think you should do this one because I think I've dominated the last couple.
This one right away, it made me it reminded me of like Outcast, and it sounded a little outcasty the way that it kind of came across. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I think it's basically about like PTSD for soldiers, and just kind of like talking about like the realities of that, and how it can be like a lifelong issue and can cause people to, if they're struggling with it and they're not getting help, it can cause people to use drugs or drink and things like that. And in this case, he's talking to about somebody who did drink, and he did what he did for kind of this guy who he's talking about in this song, is saying like, I did all this sacrifice for my own country, but now his country won't help him and doesn't which is obviously it's something that we've heard often about those who serve in America, and like how there is like a struggle with homelessness after that, and like getting like the proper help with PTSD and things like that. And because then he also talks about homelessness, and how he just can't escape the trauma, like how he which is basically the consequence to killing people, war scenario or not, like you can still have PTSD. It's something that's pretty traumatic when you think about it, especially he's talking about young kids going to war, 18-year-olds who haven't even experienced life yet, and they're having to kill a whole bunch of people, a bunch of strangers. And so it's just kind of like that kind of thought process. and like dealing with all of that, and how he's kind of saying like he wished he could have died for his country instead of coming back and continue to suffer, like mentally, like he's struggling in his mind and he can't escape that, and he just war never left him, like I think is what he says, and like nobody's really talking about this and the realities of kind of what memory can do and how memory can be triggering and set off like a whole bunch of like mental illnesses and things like that can kind of be tormenting, if it just constantly replays in your head and you can't escape it and it's all you can think about and everything is like a reminder of it or something like that. And it's really kind of, again, like same thing, like this was something that people weren't, as far as I'm aware, weren't openly all talking about it in 2001. And which, was when 9/11 happened. And so a lot of people were going to war again. So it was kind of something that would once again be relevant for a lot of people. So I think that this is really powerful and something that a lot of people can relate to because a lot of people suffer from it, and not just soldiers, but a lot of people who have gone through trauma and how it can be very difficult to escape it. But anyway, so I gave it a 4.75. I thought it was great.
So I definitely think this song does a couple of things. Its goal is to describe what post-traumatic stress disorder is to people, because I guess if you hadn't mentioned it, I never would have really considered that back in 2001. I believe people did know what it was, but there's no way the level of awareness matches anything close to today.
Like, I don't remember it being mainstream at all.
If we really consider it, we probably treat our vets worse today than we did back then, just in general. Like, we don't care, probably because there's some, like...
But they called it something else. Like, PTSD has evolved, and like...
Well, it used to be like shell shock at one point.
Yeah,
George Carlin has this bit describing the evolution of the term shell shock to post-traumatic stress disorder, done in a way to minimize the psychological impact of the word and its understanding to like the people as a whole, in a sense, to powder the water. Because when they call it shell shock, nobody's water's powdered. You know what the fuck happened?
It's too abrupt.
Bombs went off, that motherfucker's in shock. And then it basically, each time it evolved it went from a 2-syllable term to a 4-syllable term to a 6-syllable term to post-traumatic stress disorder, which is just a whole bunch of fucking syllables. But it's also numb the fuck down so that, like, I mean, sure, you know what that means when you think about it, but you can't ignore shell shock. That was my poor rendition of George Carlin.
Yep.
But I think it's really like part of it. So the fact that he chose to do this is very socially conscious and aware and fucking really dope. But I also think that it's to explain and express that we treat our vets like shit and they suffer and whatnot, but also to establish the idea strongly within the album's narrative that your past is something you can't escape, and these are experiences that you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life, no matter what your past is. Now, not everybody's going to have PTSD-like symptoms, but I think it's taking a very extreme example to just remind you that, in a sense, you all have some shit in your past that might be haunting you in some way that's like this, and it's something to be aware of, and it's something we all need to learn how to deal with. And we see that with the no way, no how do we ever forget what we've seen. And we've all been like that. We've all got that parent that was, or uncle, or bully at school, or boss, or unfortunate bad circumstance in your life when you felt violated by somebody, or I don't know. You guys can fill in the blanks. You know what I'm fucking trying to say.
Yep.
But yeah, I like how it starts off almost like they're gossiping about him, which is a good way to kind of, but not really gossip, but it's also like, well, it is, but it's also like prefacing who he is. Like, that's him in a corner of social oblivion and compass, but it has like this weird whispery kind of tone to the way he delivers it. Like, it is how we treat these fucking people. And the way he describes him being drunk, you know, if only his substance held a higher level of potency, he might be able to drown the portion of his mind which is trapped in the infinite horde. So it's like you can kind of see that, like, or the order only borders that aura, the deep cerebral gorge is buried in each beat of the heart he was once proud to home. Like, you know, like the sense that this is a person who's been almost mentally disfigured by this situation between 72 and 74.
But also
through
too,
the
kind
fangs
of
of hell.
like what like you mentioned right there is that it's about like taking like, you know, drugs or drinking to try and suppress like those memories, you know, you're just trying to like escape them in some way. And
But also like the fact that you did this for your homeland, right?
yeah.
And I do feel like, in a sense, you know, like there's no support for these people. So they're forced into this situation where it's just an old crazy guy drinking out of a bottle sitting there on the side of the road. Why? Because, well, his country sent him off but didn't take care of him when he got home. Anyway, and then it's like, and he's 43, right? Like, it's not 25 years later. He's on the brink of 43, still searching for his sanity, surveying the floor of his distorted sea. You know, like, just kind of, just picture him drunk. He's probably wobbly. You know, he remembers high school friends joking about the war. Never knew what mom was crying for. The other pieces that shines in his mind was the divine first love, so unmade, beauty, brown-eyed queen he left behind. You know, and then basically found like he just kind of remembering his life before the war, and his mom was being sad that he had to go, and basically the only reason he had to go was because his mom had another kid, and if you are the only son you don't have to go, but it's if you have a brother that, you know, the oldest one gets enlisted, etc. Just being 18 and murdering people, you know, being sent in to kill even younger people like that, and then just, you know, he absorbs how fucked up the situation is, and it's like kill or be killed, and in a couple of years of this situation scars him forever. And then 25 years later after that, you know, he's on a park bench and he's fucked up and he's, you know, kind of wanting to die. I know one of the lines is like he's too scared to fuck out. Anyway, he's almost like too scared to commit suicide because death frightens him so much that he won't even be able to kill himself in that sense. Oh, here it is. But he's seen so much death, he's scared to life of suicide. If there was only some way he could escape the penitentiary, goals get bigger and figures it'll chase away his memory. So it's like instead of actually actively killing himself, it's harder and harder drugs and intoxicants to escape, because killing yourself over time through that kind of negligence is just an easier way to handle it. And then, you know, he kind of fantasizing about his gun and how he was trained, and the plan was the murder of man. Like, that's what you're trained to do, to go kill motherfuckers, because politicians decide some shit. And although he never got rid of his dog tags, he still wishes they'd have sent his parents an American flag instead of him. You know, as you were alluding to, that in light of all this, he wished he could have just died. And it kind of makes me think of Metallica's One, I think it is, where it's the soldier, where it's like, darkness, imprison me. Anyway, that one there, it's also about a soldier who's kind of disabled, and he's just lying there coming back from the war, and he just wants to die, and the doctors don't know this because they can't tell. In the same way that how many of these people almost wish they were just dead instead of actually coming home, because the horrors and the atrocity that they saw was just so fucked up, and they weren't. And he was a kid, he's 18, being sent off. And I think part of it then is to point out maybe the parallel into the poor and the impoverished of America, where you have all these young kids, teenagers, going through such drastic shit that are also in a sense being scarred with this level of PTSD in the homeland. But I think it's kind of told by, like, you know, look how we treat these vets. Imagine our own. And maybe I'm stretching with that, but I think there might be something to it. Either way, beautiful track. Really, like, makes you think about a lot of stuff that not enough people are talking about today. So kudos, Eyedea and Abilities. The next one is called Blindly Firing.
You know we be the sickest MCs under my feet with their names on my shit list.
All right, Bonnie, how do you feel about this one?
It's an interesting beat right away, and I'll say that, and it's not necessarily my favorite one. But anyways, it's again, he makes stellar rhymes. He's kind of like, it's a little bit more like braggadocious, this one. People are basically relying on him to succeed. Like they're, he's trying to like rep his like city and like, put like their name on the map, on like the hip hop map. And he doesn't want to let them down and his fans down and like his people, his local supporters. And he's saying like this is about like real hip hop, like what he's doing, like he's trying to be like legit and like kind of old school about it in terms of like the messages that he carries in his songs. And this one is just basically about the rap game and how people need to have like real skills and real talent to succeed. And he's kind of saying like us, which is interesting. So for me, this one was not my favorite. This is probably probably my least favorite on the album. Mostly just because like the more I listen to it, the more I find the beat annoying on this one. And that, there's not really like anything like substantial, just like, hey, we're great. We're repping like our city and like, like it's an okay song. I gave it a 3.8 on 5.
All right. So off the jump, you might be wondering, okay, wise guy, you guys are talking about me here. How does this fit into your narrative of a story? Well, Eyedea here has spent a whole bunch of time establishing what he believes to be real on the authentic battles, and we guess kind of a substantiation of what's meaningful. And in the last couple of songs in particular, right, it really has been like artistic expression of what hip-hop can be. Like, look at the conceptual writing behind Color My World Mine, Liquid Sovereignty, A Murder of Memories. It's all deeper shit. It all flows into this narrative, like I've been saying. And now he's taking blind shots at the rap industry, and he's flipped on his Eyedea mask, and it's about hip-hop. And right off the jump, what's your definition of dope? Because I think our opinions differ. And that's what I thought was super interesting, because he's not even like, he's coming off like he's read off his politics books and understands the macro level of how to deal with these types of situations. So what's your definition of dope? I mean, honestly, I think one of the reasons Chris and I popped off at the beginning so much is because my definition of dope might have been more in line with what Eyedea is doing here. And while I admit Chris has evolved into a more conscious being, for a while, if you said anything with got the bag in it, that was dope for him. And I'm not trying to take shots. I'm trying to show that, based on your exposure to the powdered water in life, and to be fair, Chris has far shed the powdered water away from his life. That's why I'm bringing it up, because I think he is a great example of someone who appreciates a lot of things differently, having maybe seen what else is out there. And I'm not saying I'm innocent. Like, fuck the amount of evolution I've done. If you go watch our early Woo reviews and shit, it's fucking god awful how stupid we sound. But like, all things considered, the definition of what's dope is evolving. In fact, something like conversations I have, like, you take a song like Homicide by Eminem and Logic, or ISIS by Joyner Lucas and Logic. Are they dope songs? Kinda. They're fresh, like you can listen to them and they're hype, but like they're just tricky talented. They're like the equivalent of a magician going pick a card, any card, and doing a cool card trick. It doesn't have any special effects or anything to it. It's just a regular old card trick that honestly most magicians could learn to do on their own with that same deck of cards you have. Whereas something like, I guess, the dope Eyedea wants is a different kind of substantiation, like, whereas the bars actually matter. And let's be real, how many people can write a song about a fucking fish that challenges your conception of reality? That's dope. So that's my definition of dope lately. It's what like really is invigoratingly interesting when you realize how much volume of music is out there, and knowing that almost everybody can produce that deck of cards trick if they want to. What's dope, like substance, music derived from the pain and the essence of being alive, so when he goes like, to your own skills develop, be wise and shut the hell up. I told you, man, I'll fold your plans. You can't be colder to me. With a microphone in hand, I'll show your fans I own this land. So on the one hand, it's battle rappy, he's letting you know what's up, but on the other, it's almost like when you consider the tenacity of what goes into his songwriting, is you and your fluff fucking bullshit can't compete, because I am this like real essence of what it's supposed to be, because that's how we are. My flow is intangible, expanding growth that stands and holds hip-hop on the cross, licking shots for the lost vision. Listen, it's embedded in my genetic code to push the evolution. And if you think about what he's saying in his little battles here, I'm trying to be a thought leader pushing the culture forward, and then the rest of the album being that, you're like, yo, really think about it. He waited till like halfway through the project to even go braggadocious on us, because of course you gotta go a little braggadocious.
Yep.
But like, the way he's doing it is, I'm a fresh rapper with hella talent who's doing something to evolve shit. You're just trying to sell records. So your records got sold, and with each blow you give adds tad more gold to eat. Hole out your cracked peach bowl. As we go without rules, the freedom of independence we breed. So we'll eat till we're full, keep control, and bleed at slow-mo speed, you know? And so at that point you look at it like, yo, look at you. Sure, you got your record sales and whatever, but you're signed to your major label pushing your fake-ass image and your fake-ass brand. You're not really that dope. You don't control anything. We'll take the other route where we'll be, like, independent and, like, pushing our actual music based on the message that we care about. You know, I carry a load that weighs more than my area code. Whew. You know, that's like heavy. I don't know what his area code is. Pretty much all area codes are heavy. You know what I'm saying? Especially the ones that start with like 7s and shit. 514, that's heavy. It's heavier than 438. Just gotta throw it out there. So 514 is Montreal, and 438 is the cell phone Quebec area code. So if you have a cell phone, you could be in Montreal or anywhere else in Quebec and be a 438. Anyway, heard you grew some nuts. Now you think your crew don't stuck. Stupid fucks, in a battle you'll still lose to us. And then after all of that flashy shit, just such a blunt, verbose punch to the face with harsh, like anybody can understand it, lyricism. And then it's like, yo, we represent that real hip-hop, that fucking this is who we are. And they wrote a bless-ass hip-hop song in the vein of what the old school competitive side of it's supposed to be. And then, what's the definition of dope? Because I think our opinions differ. I guess I don't know what's dope from the viewpoint of a listener. So how's it sound? My new joints prove points, arousing styles and new noise by 1,000 miles in any direction you point. And he's right. However, the listeners don't give a fuck about this shit. That's what we've learned. Listeners don't like, I don't mean you podcast listeners. I mean, music listeners don't really care for depth. That's why Eminem releases a Kamikaze the way he did. It's about getting the sales and the views and the flashiness.
That's about depth.
Or and it's a shame, because that's what the pop music seems to have ventured for. And one thing that could be said is that the hip-hop charts have changed, in the sense that it used to reflect fresh hip-hop and the sales representing what's dope, to the charts reflecting what sells, which is honestly like a regurgitated sound that people think sounds fresh because it sold. And it's weird how that changed. And that's something I've learned over talking to y'all in the comments. So that was just an interesting kind of whatever. If I was your pal, I'd respect all criticism. I was honest, but I'm not, so you're probably an MC in the closet, subconsciously copying everything from the sentences to the penmanship, mad because I invented what you can't even pretend to intend to accomplish. Ooh! Oof! So he's like, if we were homies and you had some feedback and criticism for me and I thought you had skill, I would take it seriously. But instead, because you're instead kind of pretending to be whatever, copying shit. But the truth is, I'm inventing shit beyond what you dreamed was possible.
Yep.
And that's fresh. That's so dope. I can't even, anyway, I could keep going on and just calling him out dope. But even on this battle-esque rhyming, I'm finding that because of the essence of who he is, where he's coming from to prove why he's dope, in terms of that I'm real, I'm authentic, it makes the battle rhymes more fun for me, because when you couple it with what he's chosen to do with the rest of the album, and then you really consider it all, he really has that validation to it. He's proven, I can't even hear you skillless motor mouse with total cloud adding up to less than zero. I'm your hero. Don't go that route. I'll show you now. Peace to all the real MC. But first, I'm going to show you how my DJ's name is Abilities. Oh, it's fucking cool, dope, man. It's just fresh. Everything about this is a great song. Honestly, this may be one of my favorite. This may be one of the first times I've been maybe we should start talking about battle rap more often. Do you guys want us to review battle rap shows? Would you guys find that interesting? Let us know. We need other stuff that might be more clickbaity to the rest of the world. Anyway, I like this a lot. I gave it a 4.5 on 5. It's fucking dope, and it kind of like, I think, brings a lot of the core ideas to how he takes his approach with music. Thus, it ties into the grand plot because he takes the core narrative and flips it into the music-y thing.
Yep.
Done.
Well, we go from probably my least favorite song on the album to probably my most favorite song on the album. Let's do A Big Shot.
Cooler, she dissed you like you were neutered and told you to go get a sexual tutor. She's a big shot. She won't touch your ruler.
He sounds a lot like
Big Shot.
a lot like Eminem on the second verse. I'm not saying it was on purpose. Maybe it's just because when white boys do that nasally thing, they all sound like Eminem. Maybe that's what it is, but that's what I noticed. I'm just saying it was just the second verse. I really felt it. Anyway, how do you feel about this song? You said it was your favorite.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
I really like the boppity, like uppity kind of beat on this one. Like, I think it's really cool. The first verse is basically about this girl who's hot, and she knows how to like use her looks to play guys and get what she wants, and she'll kind of like make you fall for her, and then she'll reap all of the benefits and get you to buy her a bunch of nice things and do all these great things, but she won't put out. And then she'll bounce. And then the next verse is about some like hotshot cool guy from like high school who has everything handed to him and has like rich parents, and it's like life is just so easy, and he can just walk around and like he has zero worries and everything is just great for him, and how there's always going to be guys like that, and you can't compete with them. Like, what they've got is just so it's kind of what you dream of, but then like you see like the realities of it and like the personality that it creates, and it's not really ideal at all. And then the third verse is about rappers and kind of like how they hate on each other and maybe don't necessarily support each other, and kind of like how like everybody like kind of puts him down instead of like everybody should be kind of like supporting each other a little bit more, and then he also mentions that even though he's an asshole, he's made it, and like he's arrogant, he's a big shot, he's a great rapper. It's kind of like exactly like what this song like feeds into, and he's gonna prove it. He's gonna prove that he's like so great and that he is worth being called a big shot because he has like the skills and he also has the abilities. And for me, like I said, this is probably like the best song on the album.
Really?
Or one of them. There's another song that I really liked on here as well, which we haven't gotten to. And it was very fun, and I liked it a lot. I gave it a 5 on 5.
So, fun fact, I probably have heard this song before. I'm going to say that because it was on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 soundtrack. And it's impossible I didn't hear this song playing that game. Like, my brother is
makes sense. You're a big
ridiculous at Tony Hawk. And I want to say he's so good that you don't want to play him because he can, let's say you have 2 minutes, he'll just land one combo in that 2 minutes. And like when I mean he'll land the combo, he'll keep it going for another 5 minutes just to fuck with you. You'll have your 20,000 points, you'll be or 50 or even 100,000. You'll be like, this was a good run. And he'll land like 946 million. And you'll be like, because it multiplies by every time you do a trick. And so, and then he keeps the clock running and keeps doing more tricks, and he knows how to stay alive, and he can just go indefinitely. So when he lands his trick, it's just soul crushing. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine a lot of people want to play with him if he's like that.
However, I told him at one point, man, he should do like this open challenge bullshit and play people on the net for money and like gamble on it, because he's good enough to gamble on Tony Hawk, which is fucking a weird thing to say, but I would bet on my brother, and I'm sure he'd win 8 out of 10 times if we played this smart.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I think this still ties into the story because part of his personal experience as he's coming into life in general, up until this point, maybe we have his past, how he came to music, how music saves him. So now with blindly firing in big shops in his life, he's now a rapper and he's achieving success, and this is correlating into his hip hop world. So maybe his ego's gotten a little bit big here, and because the rest of the album does tell a different part of a story. And it keeps it going, right? So right now we're in the middle segue where everybody's partying, crazy shit's happening. Maybe before the worst shit might kick in or whatever, right? So I'm not saying that it's entirely like the worst shit's gonna kick in, but like that's kind of where we're at in like the movie that is this album. So it starts off like Bonnie said, and it's just describing big shots kind of satirically a little bit, and maybe not satirically, but like the first one describes this girl and this guy, like, you know the type of girl that walks in front of you and makes your jaw drop. She tosses some riddles and sort of tickles your soft spot. You see her in the club, she treats you like a scrub. She ain't tripping off you. She gave your whole crew in love. And it's like, that girl who knows she looks real fine. I'll be honest, I see it at work. Certain girls, like once they realize that, and you'll see gaggles. I mean, like 5 guys will crowd around one young, attractive-looking girl, and then from that moment on, as much as she hates it, is what she'll tell you. And I'm not trying to make any suppositions here about all women. I'm saying that as much as she hates the attention, somehow she still loves the attention and almost creates a circumstance for. And I'm not saying that anybody's right or wrong. I'm saying this is a strange dynamic that I see play out. I'm just trying to be
that's played into for sure.
Like you encourage the guys in your interaction with them. I'm not saying it's about what she's wearing. I'm saying.
Well, I mean, if she uses it to get ahead in life,
and I know this can come off like kind of in a bad way depending on who's listening. I'm saying I've sat there at benches and watched like groups of people, and I'm not involved. I'm listening to the conversation and the way, and you can tell the girl's not happy with the situation, and maybe there's like when you talk to her personally after, but the whole way the dynamic plays out, it's almost like you can tell at the same time any of these guys that are flocking to her is the guy that is being described in this verse, is where I was going with this.
Right. Okay.
So I've seen the susceptibility of guys running to a lady. So let's say this woman is more malicious now, because I've seen maybe girls at work who don't want to be harassed but have that effect on men. Now imagine it's the girl who wants to be in that position because she understands what it'll do to guys, and then takes advantage and then plays you over. I mean, there's apparently a trend on Twitter now where hot girls will go on dates with like anybody and eat dinner, and as many dinners as they can get out of this guy they will. They'll never fuck him, it'll never turn into anything, and as long as he'll keep paying for dinner with no sex after, she'll keep going for dinner for him.
Well, who wouldn't say yes to that? Free dinners?
Well,
and just like getting to like hang.
But you're at the same time you're eluding it. Like I had this one girl I met who may have used me for a certain substance, and we were discussing it, and every time we talk on the phone, oh yeah, I'll do all sorts of things to your Johnson and make you feel all kinds of wonderful.
Your Johnson.
And you'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna smash. I was like 21, 22, had a car, all this shit, and then we'd hang out, and like she would be all fucking weird and spacey and shit, but like consume my herbal varieties and run with that environment. And then like as long as I was willing to show up and provide that thing, she was willing to hang out with me. But the entire time it was this illusion of like, yo, I'm gonna fuck you. And that never happened.
Right.
Never even tried to kiss her that one time. Oh, go away. Like the thing is as life goes on and you're dating, as much as there's all the terrible, terrible things guys do, you may end up meeting a couple of ladies that will treat you kind of like that in your own way. And so I think that like it's almost like making fun of the guys who go after, like she's barely slept with guys. She knows how hot she is. She knows what she can do to people. She plays it to her whole advantage, but she's whatever. She's a big shot. She's your dream girl. She knows how to take over. She dissed you like you were neutered and told you to get a sexual tutor. Woo! She a big shot. She wouldn't touch your ruler. She's so beautiful, a cute but cruel looter, user, and abuser. And that's true. That is a little bit of what's happening there. And I'm not trying to shit on her. Listen, in this day and age, do what you got to do to get ahead. Unfortunately, as men are, like I don't understand it personally. I love a good pair of boobs, but I know guys that were like, like in their 30s, and I'm like, yo, ain't you seen breasts before?
Well, I mean, it's not even in their 30s. I mean, there's still like old guys that like do the same thing.
Listen,
So
old men, it's a
anybody.
different ballpark. But when you're in your 30s and 40s, at this point, as much as I enjoy a good pair, and I like a good pair of boobs, I'm not trying to imply that it isn't a pleasurable and fun thing. But it also isn't like you showing me boobs is going to get a fucking dollar out of my pocket. It's not like you showing me boobs is getting you fucking food. At the very least, we might have to go a little further than just you showing me boobs if we're even going to indulge that conversation is, like,
Yeah.
I'm 31. A little bit past, that level of
And
infatuation.
cheap, so you don't want to like spend too much money on food without getting anything.
That's true. I am very cheap. Maybe I'm not the right type of person. But I can assure you one thing. If I was given like millions of dollars, I would not be spending $10,000 at strip clubs because it's insanity. You can just find escorts for significantly cheaper. Not the right line of reasoning in front of you,
Okay.
but facts for all y'all on the internet, okay? That's just facts. It's just cheaper. It's such a shit investment that these guys blow money on just to prove they can. Oh, it's so weird to me, baffling. Anyway, I like your assessment of verse 2 where, like, so on the one hand, these girls exist. Learn how to identify them. They might be a source of pain in your life. He may have fallen for these women or whatever, or either way, it's just the type of big shot to tie into the bigger plot of this little song. Verse 2 has the cool guy in school who's rich and he's going to do real well and there's like nothing you can do and he treats you like shit because you're a little bit of a loser.
Yep.
I also get the feeling that Eyedea was treated this way by people
Oh,
in
and he's
his
also
life.
still 19, so it's still relatively fresh on
And
his
I
mind.
bet he wasn't the coolest kid. You don't become a emo rapper of the capacity of Eyedea. I think it's fair to call him an emo rapper.
A little bit.
Being not bullied in school. Like, you definitely went through some hard times, as you can believe. Like, I just don't think he was
with,
the coolest
the
kid.
mental illness and everything
Yeah,
else.
and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I got tortured in high school. Not as bad as him or many others. I don't actually know how bad it was in high school. I shouldn't make suppositions about things I don't know. Moving on. So anyway, I really do like the second verse because it points out, like, look, it's just these are people in life you're going to interact, these big shot types. And then he kind of talks about his favorite type of big shot because there is a good kind of big shot, and I think that's part of this point too. It's not like being a big shot is inherently bad, but in the verse 1 and 2, you have people being big shots, one because of what they look like, two because of what they inherited. The rapper's being a big shot because he's so fucking dope.
There's a genuine talent.
Exactly. So, like, I mean, he kills it. Like, my favorite rappers are egotistical bastards. The people that never clap for your set, they think you're whacker. Then them, because they're the masters. I bet disaster is causing their mind when you rhyme and plaster their jaw shut with a fat verse. To him, you're a hazard, weak matter, a reason for laughter. He's just pointing out, like, painting a picture of this rapper who is, like, the worst to go against because he'll fucking destroy you. To his genetically engineered emotional pattern of tearing kids in battles, that'll explain why he mean monks. He told you your team sucks, said you were a cream puff and fled. It's just awesome. And that little last bit was so ridiculous that you had to have been going in hard to make that fucking worth. You dream of choking him with a mic cord because you're so fucking mad. And then you tell your friends you think he's tight, but secretly you hope his career won't be lasting because then you can't achieve because this guy's so much better than you. Because he's an asshole, but he's got a nice sound. You know what else? You're looking at him right now. Oh, Eyedea's the asshole rapper. Eyedea's the big shot. When the girls touch him, they don't even wash their hands. He's a big shot.
Yep.
You can say he's a creep. You put him in a room where the idols will make him look weak. Oh, Eyedea the best. That's how the song ends. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm a big shot, big price, the best thing that ever happened in the history of hip-hop. That's a little grandiose. I'm not 100% sure I agree. But, of all the little underground dudes who come by, little, I mean non-mainstream, that we have, like, come across, this album's a high contender so far for, like, some of the freshest shit that we've discussed. And I'm kind of glad we didn't do this until I was able to, like, really understand this level of thinking, right? Because can you imagine trying to do this back in, like, 2017?
Yeah.
It would have been trash. Ismail would have been like, fuck you guys. You didn't even try hard. Anyway, I don't know. I gave this track a 4.6 because it's a little bit better, I think, than the standard of this album, but not, like, blowing my mind.
Okay.
All right, folks. So here's what's up. We're doing that thing again where we're going to split this in two because the truth of the matter is we are looking at over 2 hours. We're halfway through this project, yes. And I would rather take the time to give the rest of the album this much love and attention. When we push it past 3 hours, you guys don't seem to click on it as much. So,
And also, it's pretty draining on us. Like, I mean, not pretty draining,
No,
but like sometimes
I mean,
we get tired.
you'll notice in many album reviews that we do,
The energy level.
the
kind
second,
of,
the third third of it. So the first 2/3 is solid, and we don't try as hard on the last one. So we've been at this for a minute, and I think that the rest of the album honestly deserves the same level of attention to
Yeah.
break down the depths of how good of an album this is. Ismail, your choice was that good, okay? It is. So we're gonna record the next part in a couple of days, just because my work schedule blocks up my Monday nights now. My problem, not really yours. However, you should see part 2 come out later on this week after this review comes out, and in the future there's a part 2. So yeah, thank you for your understanding in regards to that. And because Ismail requested it, we will also in the second part discuss the standalone track Even Shadows, Higher
Yep.
Shadows, and that's some foreshadowing for you. And we'll get to the album conclusion then. On that note, thank you for being with us through part 1. If you guys would prefer us to cut them into 2 smaller parts, take some more time, let us know. We want to shape this show for y'all so that, it's more fun for everyone.
Yeah.
Is there a length that you think is too long or too short? It's never going to be too short. I'm really bad at this shit.
Yeah. Because he'll just keep on talking. So
It's true. Even by myself, I can do an hour 40 sometimes. And Bonnie's obviously super important, and her opinion counts. So
Thank you.
anyway, I want to hear your comments. If you make that effort to leave a comment, you might just be in our favorite comments of last week for episode 2 on this one. Just saying, that's what we did last time because
Yep.
we're being fun. But yeah, I would love to see what you have to say. I look forward to commenting with you. And yeah, let us know anything you want. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Feel free to hit that like button if you do like the video, or hit the dislike button if you don't. Let us know through democracy how you feel. Special thanks to the patrons Ismail Gadamsi, Chris Prado, Jonathan Barnes, DJ Black Hurricane, Linda Williams. They're all fucking dope. They help us get a new camera. They help support us in a direct sense. And for $1 or more, you can support us. $1 or more a month, you can support us too. Help us reach the next level. And if you go high enough, $5 a month, or you can join this request pool and end up getting a 2-parter review out of us, just like Ismail. There's
There
no
you go.
guarantees it's a 2-parter. The album really has to give us that much to talk about.
Yeah.
Sometimes the album just doesn't give us as much to talk about, but this shit's like an entire philosophy course in a fucking album, so let's give it the due diligence. Plus, rest in peace one more time to this brilliant artist who
Yep.
provided us with this great piece of art. I feel like I'm going on for a while. We make music too. Check that out on the channel. Let us know what you think. Have yourselves a wonderful day. We'll be back soon with the rest of this review.
Bye, guys.